What's up, everybody? Hope everybody's doing well. I just thought I'd maybe make a quick little video and tell a couple stories. And hadn't done a video in a little while. It's been crazy busy at the shop, and I think with all the craziness going on in the world, maybe it's time to maybe lift some spirits, maybe, and talk about what's going on and go from there. So it's like, where do you start? I don't guess I've really lived through a time like this in my life. I'm 43, and it's been a pretty good life so far. A good bit of crazy ups and downs, but I mean, this is probably one of the craziest times I can remember, and real life stuff anyway. So we got hammered with a virus, came out of nowhere, I guess. We're all jammed in our house, and you pretty much know the rest of the story. We're seeing some crazy things happen right now out in the world, and I think we're gonna have to try to get along with one another, and that's just the bottom line. So the story would be, a fella told me one time, an older gentleman told me that if you absolutely can't stand somebody, or you just can't get along with them, or you just somebody you really wouldn't want to hang around or be friends with, there's a big chance that if you sat down and talked with that person, you could still learn something from them. So as a kid hearing that, it was kind of like but being older now, that's true. If you completely disagree with somebody, I think that's partially what's wrong with the world. Is we got social media now, and we're typing out things that we probably wouldn't say in real life. And I truly believe that if we would just talk to people face to face, even if we can't stand them or totally disagree with them politically or anything, you're completely on two different sides of the spectrum, you still could probably invite that person over to sit down at your dinner table and have a conversation with them. And you probably have to do your part to get along, but you still could probably learn something for sure. So that was something it took me a long time to really come to terms with. But that fellow was my grandpa Watson that told me that, and I don't recall anything he's ever told me that didn't really come true, and probably could be used today more than ever. So, but uh, that was kind of a little quick story I wanted to share, and it could probably help anybody. Right now, I mean, there's so much fighting and shouting at each other, and so many people are in disagreement, and I mean, just today, I've really shut myself out of social media mostly, except for racing and the news. I haven't watched the news in about 6 years because it's just always like obituaries. It's kind of like maybe someday I'd like to turn the news on and see that Miss Jones had a flat tire on her way to work, and a good Samaritan came by and helped her change it. Didn't charge her anything, and she got to work on time. And it's never that. It's always just bad, and I know that bad sells, and it's, clicks and everything, but I wish it wasn't like that. I think this is totally my opinion, but I think the news, whether it's any of it, it doesn't matter if it's, CNN or Fox, whatever it is, it's drumming people, or pitting people against one another, pretty much. It's drumming up things that sometimes it's not true, or sometimes it's bent and twisted. So anyway, I hadn't watched that in a long time, and I hadn't been really looking at a lot of social media. But today, for the first time in a long time, I went and sat down in a restaurant and had a cheeseburger. And my cousin and I went there and hung out, and it was kind of awesome to go, really. But the news was on, playing Fox or whatever, and I was trying not to pay it any attention. But they were talking, this guy's had some ropes hooked to a statue in D.C., tearing it down. The thing is, man, those statues, they're not those people's that are tearing them down. They're not their property. if they don't agree with what that person did, fine. But you're going to hook a rope to it and tear it down? Come on. Those statues have been there forever. And I get that there's, you know, some of those statues might have been a people that those people don't agree with that's trying to tear it down. They may have been slave owners. Look, I'm totally with people that some of the first Americans, white people, did people wrong. Okay, taking Indians' land from them, enslaving any race of people. Enslaving black people, it's just not right. And I get it. I mean, I understand that it's bad and it should never happen. But we're in 2020. We've came leaps and bounds from those days. I don't personally know a soul that I can think of right now, anybody that hates somebody solely for their skin color. I just don't know them. And I mean, I know probably 1,000 people or more. I probably know more than that. And from all generations, all walks of life. And I just don't buy into that, man. I don't see how that's true. I don't see how tearing down a statue that's been up since the founding of the country is going to do anything. Look, the Constitution is written by some of those same people that are on those statues. Were not perfect back then. We're still not perfect today. Everybody's harbors evil and keeps it at bay or attempts to. So I just don't buy into. Look, it's not your statue to tear down. It's not your property. It's not your. You shouldn't even be thinking. To me, if you get a job and you're working really hard and you're trying to better yourself, and you're going as hard as you can all day and grinding away, and you're attempting to have a responsibility, raise a family. It's not 100% necessary to have a family, but just to live correctly, live right, and move forward, you're not going to have time to do that garbage and hold some placard on the end of some wooden stick and wave it around like so much more high and mighty than anybody else in the world. Come on, everybody's at the same level. We're all equal. I don't understand the fact that somebody walking into a room and their skin color either makes them better or worse than the other person. I mean, it's character. Your character is everything. I've spent my whole life trying to have a decent character, like my grandpa told me. Both of my grandparents, well, all four really. I was fortunate and had all four, and my mom and dad too. It's like act like somebody in the world. Have manners. Say yes sir and no sir. Respect the police officers. Respect everybody that's a minute older than you. If you don't agree with them, sit down and talk to them like you can learn something from them. So it's just upsetting, man, to see people tearing things down that's not theirs. And like I said, I understand where they may be coming from. I was out west visiting a friend of mine not too long ago. I think about 3 years ago. I think today's school system's really slack because I never really learned too much about American Indians, Native Americans. And we were out there and we saw some statues. I think I was probably near the Grand Teton Mountains and maybe near Wyoming, Utah, somewhere out in there. It's out in the middle of nowhere where you see a sign that says, have you got plenty of gas? If you don't, you better pull in here and get some gas. But anyway, I saw a statue or a monument or something and read the little story. And it basically was, Grant gave these Indians some property, like maybe, how can he give it to them? It was theirs to begin with, but you know what I'm saying. So he gives them his property. Somebody's up there digging around and whacks into a gold nugget or something, and they're like, I guess Grant finds out about it, and he's like, sorry guys, we can't really give you this property now. You're gonna have to move on down the road. We need this property now, and it was for gold. So it's like, We did that. We as an American colonization, one of the first, some of the first Americans here, uh, did that, and that's not right. I mean, and and I understand that nobody's perfect, but the people that wrote that Constitution, you know, look at the paper that it's written on, and look at what it says. No time in history has any other form of idea that for striving for freedom has it done any better. You know, you take anybody that's tried communism full blown, it doesn't work. Millions of bodies stack up every time it's ever tried. And capitalism isn't perfect, but I think it's the best we got. I think the West has the best idea back to the individual. It gets down to the individual. That's what you want. It's the sovereign individual is the best. They're judged by their character, and you don't group people into groups, and like these people are doing in these big cities where they're like, it's just this broad stroke of a brush that this whole big group's like, no, break it down into the person. Let's talk about the person, who they are, what they are, how they act in the world, and stop putting them into groups. I mean, that's the same thing Joseph Stalin did. He grouped all these people into groups, and made other people hate them and told lies about them. They end up dying. The farmers over there, they had just gotten some land. Stalin comes along, wants to collectivize their farm, tells their neighbors, hey, these guys are why you can't rise up, because they got property and they got help, and they're growing all the country's food. Do away with them. You can kill them. So you got to read history, man, and you got to look into that kind of thing that happened years ago. And it's some of it's starting to happen right now. I mean, the Soviet Union, all those statues, were tore down back then. They rewrote history and erased pictures out of books and erased text out of books, and we just can't let it happen in this country. We really need to be serious. We need to stand up for our freedoms and believe in what we believe in, and not lose it. Because I truly believe that if we lose the idea that the individual is the most important thing, then we could possibly lose the republic. And I mean that people say, "Oh, that'll never happen." I'm telling you right now, it can. If too many people mob up and try to bury all the history in this country, it'll happen. So, I was wanting to do this kind of a positive video, and maybe it still is, but it's just too serious not to talk about, and I don't have all the answers. I'm just a dumb farmer mechanic, who knows. But so, a long time ago, I went down a little rabbit hole on YouTube. I thought I'd share it with you guys, and then I'll wrap it up. There's a college up in the Pacific Northwest called Evergreen State College, okay? And that college is funded by, I think, Washington State's where it's at. And I think this has been about 3 years ago. I watched this video about this professor that was in that college. And okay, so I'll give you a little backstory. Basically, this college, as long as it's been around, it's had a little day where they recognize people of color, and it was just a thing to where everybody that wasn't a person of color stayed home, and it was just kind of a respect thing, whatever. And everybody always did it, and it was just the way the college did. Well, the way the world was kind of polarizing and everything was going kind of crazy, one of the professors there, he and maybe a couple of others, white guys and ladies, came to work that day, and not really. They wasn't trying to be mean. This particular professor that I was watching about was a left-leaning liberal guy that definitely was not racist at all. It actually had plenty of evidence that he fought racism, and was just kind of just a good-hearted dude. He's a little bit progressive and lean left, but I mean that's not a bad thing if you're not radical. And I think he might have been like a microbiologist or something and taught some of that. But anyway, he decided to come to school, and he sent out an email that said, he thought that him staying home and recognizing this thing, this day of recognition for people of color, that it it would it would kind of divide more than it would help, because I think the college was already having like some protests maybe or something. So basically, what happened, and guys can go check it out. There's a whole documentary on it. It's Benjamin Boyce. I think it's Benjamin A. Boyce. He was a student there and kind of was just like in the background, taking it all in and videoing it and everything. And he does a whole documentary on what exactly happened. But anyway, this big riot broke out, and they were like walking around school with bats and yelling at people, and they basically locked the whole admin in a library room. They locked them in there and pretty much said, "We'll let you out when our demands are met. You're going to recognize this day or else." It's basically what they did, and they ruled with intimidation. They locked them in there. They actually didn't even. There's a campus police, and they like threatened them or told them they couldn't come in unless they wasn't in uniform and didn't have a firearm, and basically it was a radical left, progressive, neo-Marxist mob that was in there, and I knew when I saw that, and this video was already a little bit old when I saw it. I knew that if that's happening in colleges, with kids, it's going to break out into the world or into the country anyway. And it did, So I saw this professor not long ago on Joe Rogan. He said the same thing. He said, "I told you guys when this happened at Evergreen, it was going to happen here." And he said, "We have to come together, have unity, and try to figure out how to keep this from happening." And it's not. This is probably going to really be controversial, but I'm saying it. Unless we get rid of the oppressor narrative, it's not going to go away. You can't have this group of people that are supposedly holding people back and oppressing them in 2020, where this is America, everybody has a chance. All you got to do is work hard, get in there and grind, and you can go anywhere anybody else can. And so we got to get rid of that oppressed narrative, and I think we can move forward if we do that. I think it's just it's not a good idea, and it's not true. There's nobody in 2020 that's been pinned to the ground that can't get up and get a job and work. Now, having said that, there are kids that haven't had family, haven't had a Grandpa Watson. They haven't had anybody to tell them right from wrong. They've grew up on the street. That's a cultural issue. Those people are to blame that left those kids behind. Okay, look, it's just like this reoccurring nightmare. It happened to you. It happened to your parents. It happened to their parents. If you're gonna have kids, and you know what causes you to have kids, if you're gonna do that, before you even think about doing that, you need to know that you're gonna sit down and raise that kid, and at least teach it right from wrong, and not leave before it's even born. On the minute of that it's conceived, you walk out and leave and never come back. Come on, that right there is the downfall of society. Is kids not have. If I didn't have my grandparents and my parents, who knows? My grandpa sat me down and taught me all these good things. My parents did too, but my grandpa had a farm, and I spent my time with him, and so that's where the lessons came from. And he was never once mean to anybody, no matter what their skin color was. Maybe somebody did him wrong or something, he would stand up for himself, but he wasn't mean to people. So anyway, you ought to check that video out on it's Benjamin A. Boyce, Evergreen State College. Watch that video. There's like some quick ones you can look at and see what went on, but if you watch that whole documentary, it really is like, wow, this was coming true 3 or 4 years ago, So anyway, Papa Watson said don't talk about politics, but at this point in time, we got to stop tearing down statues. We got to stop being mean to each other. We got to stop hating each other. We got to stop, just we got to stop treating each other like less than human. We're all human. We all bleed red, and we just need to get along. And hopefully you guys enjoy this video. If you do, think about maybe shooting me a like or something. And I appreciate you watching tonight. And let's see if we can get some unity and get together and be a country again, guys. Have a good night.